thank you very much for accepting to be our guest on the ECA podcast series. How is Ghana going for you?
Oh no, it's really great to be here. It's a nice country. It's not my first visit to Accra. It's actually like 7 times, but last visit was 10 years ago, so it's amazing to see the progress. It's a dynamic place and developing.
Wonderful. So we're having this intergovernmental meeting. It's a joint North Africa, West Africa thing. Previously, this used to happen solely on a sub-regional basis, meaning North Africa has its ongoing and then West Africa. Why did they decide to put them together?
I think one incentive is basically to improve collaboration but knowledge sharing across our countries, and in particular the African Continental Free Trade Agreement provides great opportunity for Africa to integrate with each other, and ECA has particular comparative advantage there, having 5 sub-regional offices, so our member states see this as opportunity to get to know the countries from other regions.
Now, why the focus on food security, energy transition and value chains?
So these 2 regions, West and North Africa, they both have basically common challenges and complementarities. So when we talk about trade and they should trade with each other, it's about complementarities. But when it comes to choosing a topic that would interest both regions, it's about common challenges. So certainly the food security is a major challenge for both North and West Africa. Just to put some numbers, so between 2019, which was pre-COVID, until 2022, globally, the number of undernourished people, according to FAO, increased by 120 million. So more than 56, 57 million were in Africa. And out of that, 25 million in both West and North Africa combined. So 5 million in North Africa and about 20 million in West Africa. So it's a huge challenge for both of our regions. And energy similarly, energy transition is a challenge globally. And each region is approaching it slightly differently. They both have energy exporters, energy importers. For North Africa, there is the added niche that basically they are part of also Mediterranean region. And therefore, there is an interest how they can export to Europe. But there is actually value chain and pipeline that would go, also from West Africa through North Africa to Europe.
Now, this issue of food insecurity has become a very much talked about subject. And over the past 2-3 years, since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, but especially over the last several months with the Russia-Ukraine crisis, Africa seems to blame it all, or at least for the most part, on the Russia-Ukraine crisis, as if we never had such issues prior to those crises.
I think you made an important point. So when we look at the food crisis and the attentions, or food price crisis and the attention they receive, food crisis insecurity always receives huge attention when the prices spike. Then they come down, which now see already happening to some extent, and the interest disappears. So when it comes to mitigating the food price increase, it's usually about short-term measures are about managing the demand. So how to ensure that there is basically enough funds among population, and if not, how to supply, how to deliver the food to them, how to restrict exports, which is not really a fortunate measure from long-term point of view, but many countries in our region actually did introduce export bans. But the long-term solution lies on the supply side. And the supply can be addressed through 2 channels mainly, and this was a focus of this meeting: sustainable agriculture production and trade. So we should not also confuse food security with food sovereignty. So perhaps at the continent, for Africa, the ambition for Africa to feed itself is completely makes sense and is appropriate, and in fact Africa has potential to feed more than itself. But each individual country, it would not make sense. So for each country, countries should be trading with each other. So Africa as a continent can be food sovereign, but individual countries, it's suboptimal. They should benefit from trade.
But Africa is not food sovereign.
It's very far from this ambition, unfortunately. So again, some numbers. So more than 1/3 of undernourished people are in Africa, which is certainly globally, so which is certainly much higher than the share of Africa's population. So and obviously without food security, the other SDGs will not be achieved either, the Sustainable Development Goals, because that impacts productivity, that impacts well-being, that impacts health. So there is really spillover from this SDG to other SDGs.
So it speaks to the paradox of plenty and insufficiency.
Yes, that's
Those
right.
two really shouldn't go together when it comes to food.
Right.
How do we get there then? How do we bring Africa to that place where, yes, we've got plenty and we can feed ourselves from what we have? How do we get there and when do we get there?
I think this was really well discussed in yesterday's expert group meeting and also summarized today. So unfortunately still, for the most part, not only, but for the most part, Africa still exports raw materials and there needs to be more value addition. So as soon as Africa starts moving up the value chain, and it will not be at its beginning, but the higher towards the end of the value chain, the more profitable it is, then Africa will transfer its plenty, the resources, into material well-being and hopefully well-being overall.
Right, so the joint meeting for West Africa and North Africa, you are in the second session of this joint experience. How was the first one and how is the second one going? What do you expect to see coming out of Accra?
So the first one last year in Morocco was really the first time we tried this, and in some sense this year we are building on the theme. So we are going deeper into some issues and we are particularly focusing on the sustainable agriculture and sustainability, etc. But what we really want, rather than meeting, to have start having joint work programs. So identify area that is joint for North and West Africa and start working together in some areas.
Have you identified some of those areas, and what are some of the key areas where you see collaboration happening?
Yeah, we are still brainstorming, but one idea is, for example, the regional value chain. So, for example, for our office, important project in the coming year will be promoting export competitiveness of the furniture sector in Egypt. But of course, furniture and wood processing more broadly is not happening only in Egypt. It actually can be or is comparative advantage or important sector for other countries as well. Now, it is not the most important sector from point of view of GDP, but we are really concerned about employment impact and the skill component. So it is one of these sectors that can provide many benefits. So we see some opportunities for collaborating there.
Right, and I would hope, at least, all these conversations and deliberations are unfolding within the context, or at least with due consideration to the importance of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Meaning, it's of course it's North Africa, it's West Africa, but it speaks to the needs that Africa as a continent faces and why we need to make the AFCFTA happen. Is that?
Yes. So actually one of the participants made very important point. So we continue to speak about AFCFTA and it is a great opportunity. But for some countries, if they are not ready, it can also be challenged.
Right.
So countries need to be ready because it will increase, it may change structure of their opportunities to export and produce. So together with AFCFTA, there is also need for sustainable, for social support, for social networks and for those who may require transition to new sectors to support them during this transition. But overall, the research and evidence from other regions is clear that for Africa as a whole, this is highly beneficial and will help unite the continent, which is really very fragmented. It's more fragmented than any other continent, a lot of landlocked countries, relatively small countries. So this is a way to expand the markets, and the size of the markets is important to the investors.
Well, congratulations on the good work you're doing, and all the best as you look ahead.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you also for this discussion. And of course, we're doing this work also thanks to collaboration with you. So it's an important part.
Thanks indeed. All the best to you.
Thank you.